Okay, so we just want to officially welcome everyone. We're really definitely glad that you are here. The title of our workshop on the page here is You're Not Stuck, You May Be Fragmented: How Unresolved Grief Splits the Heart and What Integration Makes Possible. So, whether you came here tonight because you're tired or hopeful or curious or maybe just a little desperate for something to finally be different, there is definitely a place for you here. And before we begin, I just want to take a moment to honor you for showing up because conversations about grief, loss, transitions are not always easy. It actually takes some courage to pause for a moment and be willing to face the deeper things of the heart. So we actually talked to you guys a little bit. So we have Colorado, we have Alaska. So it's kind of a nice broad variety across the map. We're in Texas. So tonight's going to be part teaching, part reflection. I would encourage you to take notes, grab a journal if you have one nearby. Most of all, though, just be willing to be honest with yourself tonight. So before diving in, there are a few things we want to highlight to help you get the most out of our time together. The webinar will last about 60 minutes, give or take. The last 30 minutes will be set aside for questions, and we love, 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 love questions. So also, we would love to be able to see you and connect. We're so happy that you have your video screens on. That's awesome. Lastly, if you want to interact with us in the chat, definitely feel free. Any questions you have, put those in the chat, and we will absolutely address them in our Q&A at the end. So,
Wonderful. So we just wanted to start by saying this. If a part of you almost didn't want to come tonight and another part of you thought, well, I really need to be there, then you already are experiencing a little bit of what we're going to talk about tonight. Have you ever felt like one part of you wants to move forward and another part of you might feel tired or guarded or numb? And even sometimes, like a part of you might know that something is true, but still there's a reaction that's like kind of reacting as if the past is happening now, like kind of reacting to something that's happening now with the whole weight of something that's happened in the past. So many times it's easy to think of that as failure, or they might say, I'm stuck, or I lack discipline. I just need to try harder, or why am I even like this? So it's important to know that sometimes that resistance that we feel, we want to let you know it isn't laziness or a lack of discipline or some kind of spiritual failure. Sometimes it's grief, or what we would say is unresolved grief. So it could be something like unfinished conversations, unmet expectations, old disappointments, maybe quiet losses that were never named. So we're going to unpack this because it's so important. And we want you to know that it isn't weakness. It's really how our hearts learned to survive unresolved grief. So we want to take a moment and talk about why we are here. So why this matters so much to us, um, and why we are here. Okay, so we're here because we both know what it's like to stand at the edge of something new and realize that we're carrying more than we thought. And there's this feeling of wanting to step forward, but being pulled back. There's that kind of resistance feeling. And for us, we experienced such incredible healing when we went through the program of grief recovery. And so in doing that, we really felt like we really wanted this for other people. And we got certified right away. This was so life-changing, the grief recovery method. And both Dan and I had deeply life-changing experiences through this work. And honestly, I can say it touched every relationship that we have, and especially our marriage,
mm,
helping our communication, helping in every way when you heal those deep-rooted things. And along the way, we discovered that the grief recovery work that we've done and still do are powerful tools, in fact, the most powerful tools in our own lives. So, and it's not because it necessarily fixes everything, but because it helps you get down to the root of what's been carried. And from there, it really opens the door. It opens the door to a completely different way of showing up in your life, more present, more whole, and more at peace. So that's why we're here. We are here not because we want to tell people they need to try harder, but because we feel like people deserve a way to lay down what they've been carrying and step into a new season of life, lighter, freer, and more whole.
Yeah. It's interesting. Most of us were never taught what grief actually is or what it does to us when it's left unfinished. Because grief isn't only about death or divorce, it's really about any loss that changed the shape of our lives. So that includes relationships, dreams, seasons, safety, or parts of ourselves that we, for whatever reason, had to leave behind. And so when something overwhelms our emotional capacity, like loss or betrayal or unmet expectations or disappointment, our heart adapts. And it actually does something kind of brilliant. It divides itself into different responsibilities. So one part will step in to be strong. Another part shuts down emotion. One part becomes hyper responsible. One part avoids risk. One part keeps making sure everyone stays happy. And it's important to note that these parts aren't dysfunctional. They're actually protecting you. But then what happens is what once protected you may now be preventing you from fully living. And unresolved grief is what's keeping you stuck in patterns like that. So I just want to pause a minute and put out there, and you feel free to answer or not, but just to at least think about, can you think of one pattern in your life that may have been started as protection? And I'll just start by sharing. So for me, I had a very difficult relationship with my dad growing up. Fortunately, this process really helped me reconnect with him, and I ended up having an amazing relationship with him. But growing up, not so much. And so one of the things that I would do is I would just sort of disconnect from my situation at home because it was so painful. The problem was is then with other relationships in my life, I didn't know how to kind of reconnect. I only knew how to disconnect to protect myself. And so it kind of left me with this feeling as though I was always watching my life happen on TV, but I wasn't actually living it. And so it's really important that you kind of hear this. The problem isn't a motivation issue. It's not a lack of discipline. It's not a lack of faith. It's really just our our hearts work very hard to keep us safe and protected. But once we've gone past the moment of survival, they hang in there and linger, and they actually make our lives more difficult. So just something to kind of keep in mind with that.
Yeah, and something to think about patterns.
Yeah, because grief is often misunderstood. Like I said, it's not just about death and divorce. Grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of a familiar pattern of behavior. That's how the Grief Recovery Institute defines it. And I like that definition.
Hmm.
Anytime something changes, basically, a relationship, a dream, a sense of safety, your expectations, grief enters the room. And what happens is when grief is not properly expressed and completed, the heart, like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't just, move on, it adapts. And it adapts by fragmenting. It's literally splitting apart to survive. So your emotions get compartmentalized, memories become isolated, your protective parts stay vigilant and on duty. And that's why you can feel completely and totally functional on the outside and then also completely divided on the inside.
Yes, and I love this slide. Here are some parts that show up because we've been talking about parts and
Yeah.
how we kind of go into these different like behaviors, right? And so here are some of those. The strong one, the caretaker, maybe one that numbs out, the high achiever, the avoidant one, or the over spiritual one. So, and sometimes we go into them, we can slip into different ones, right? And so we're here to talk about this, and there is no shame in any of these things because what we discovered is that they are about survival. They're about surviving, mostly emotional, right? Is about doing that. Um, so if you're comfortable, name the part that you kind of notice the most when stuff is going on. Where do you go? I am a type, kind of a type that likes to keep busy. So I go very much into the achiever. I'm an achiever. I will try to get things done. Gives me this sense of everything's good. I'm in control. Things are moving. So that's something that I'm very aware of. I did live my life very numb for a long time. So I numbed out. I actually, when I was in my 20s, I developed a pretty severe eating disorder because I figured out that that was a protective coping mechanism was to shove all my feelings in and to get rid of them all by throwing them up and then going into my life as though everything was perfectly fine. And I did that for too long, for many, many years, most of my 20s. And it was very kind of like traumatizing and it was a difficult one to recover. But these tools that I learned were what was underneath those behaviors, those addictions or those behaviors that we think I really thought I had discovered a way to control my emotions and to present my life out there. So it was so powerfully freeing to do the process and really heal from the roots of what was underneath those behaviors. So if there's anything that's popping up for you, put it in the chat. If there's anything that's coming to your mind, or we could even chat more about it at the end, or if there's something that you're thinking and just something to think about. What do you notice the most?
Yeah. I would say this is probably where one of the biggest myths shows up. It's probably my pet peeve when it comes to the grief mythology that we're sort of unfortunately exposed to. Um, because time does not integrate fragmented parts. Like if, for example, you're in the kitchen and you accidentally drop a dish and it shatters on the floor, are you going to A, grab a chair and wait for all of those fragmented parts to just join back together? If you wait long enough, they will. Or will you grab a broom and the dustpan and sweep it up and put it in the trash, right? I mean, it's one of those things. But that doesn't stop from it being part of the Greek mythology. So time passes. The emotional wounds remains, it's not addressed, and insight alone is not going to integrate the parts either. We can study about it, we can, look at it from all these different angles, but until we actually address it and process it at the root, insight doesn't integrate the parts either. And that's why you can have a full understanding of your patterns, you could talk to a friend about it and still be divided. Even spiritual language can sometimes bypass grief. For example, have you ever heard someone say, well, God is in control, or it's all for a reason, or God doesn't give you more than you can handle, or maybe you even told yourself something like, I just need more faith, or whatever, fill in the blank. The bottom line is God doesn't shame the parts of us that learn to survive. He simply invites them to heal. And so maybe think and ask yourself, and again, you can share this or not, but just at least think about it. Have you ever said, I should be over this by now? Because we don't want to continue overriding parts. We are not interested in modifying behavior, right? We experience incredible healing when we recognize these patterns and name what they are carrying. And it's an amazing and powerful process.
Yeah, so important. So many things that get said at times of loss that are intellectually helpful. I'm sorry, intellectually true,
True,
possibly,
but not helpful.
not emotionally helpful.
Yeah.
Not at all. So integration, I love this photo because it's so, I
Yeah.
think it's so perfect. It's not about erasing these parts. It's not even for sure about silencing our emotions. And it's definitely not just getting over it. Integration is bringing these fragmented parts back into relationship, like back as a whole. Kathy, I appreciate what you shared. I feel like I've been all of those, so can relate. And so, what we teach and what we believe is that we can complete what was emotionally unfinished. And that completion is what brings wholeness and what brings healing. So, allowing grief to be felt, expressed, and released is definitely a part of the process. And so, we want to learn to live from a unified heart instead of from these competing internal voices. So it's important to know that healing doesn't delete your story. It really kind of weaves it more back together, thinking of these puzzle pieces, they fit together.
Mm.
So living in this kind of integration feels like internal calm, less self-sabotage, less procrastination, more clarity, more energy, and energy returning, and what we call emotional congruence, where you might not feel so from one extreme to another, that congruence, and living where you don't have to manage competing internal voices.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Okay, so this is a question, and we wanted to this out there. If your parts, these little parts that we go to, if we didn't have to work so hard anymore, what would feel different in your life? And if you want to put that in the chat or just think about it, when you are, when you have kind of like different things that are pulling you, well, I want to move forward, but I'm not sure that I have what it takes, or I'm not sure if I'll be successful, or what if I'm not good enough? Like whatever those competing thoughts are, what would it feel like to have those be silenced, coming from more of a place of wholeness? And you didn't
Mhm.
have to work so hard anymore. So thinking
Yeah.
about how you want to feel.
Yeah. Because if there were a safe and structured way to become emotionally complete, would you want to explore it? If something inside of you is resonating with this, we want to offer you some encouragement. The grief recovery method gives structure and safety to this process. It helps you identify relationships that are incomplete. It helps you express and name things that haven't been named and expressed. It helps you to release emotional pain without reliving all of the trauma and ultimately become emotionally complete. And I think what I love most about this is that it's not endless processing. It's a path. There's an actual clear path to emotional completion. And again, it's not behavior modification. It's actually a restoration of the heart, which I love that part of it.
Yes, and I love this idea is that we don't want to kind of live where we're just managing parts, where there's kind of like a behavior modification, or like trying not to get angry, let's say, or explode, or go to something to take the edge off, like the wine or whatever that is. We want to go, we don't want to keep managing parts. You are allowed to become whole. And we have experienced this for ourselves. And we love to help people experience this deep transformational healing and integration. And so, what we always do in our webinars is invite you to set up a call, and we would love to hear your story and help you experience this as well.
Yeah.
And so, we do that by showing you this path to healing and growth. And because we do believe that healing is possible, and it doesn't mean forgetting, it doesn't mean that you might stop missing what was. There's a lot of times that grief, one of the things that we talked about is the ending of a familiar pattern of behavior brings up conflicting feelings. And so there's a lot of experiences that we have that are grief, that are loss. And sometimes we might miss a season of life, or a person that we've lost, a job that we've lost, anything like that. But we can become, and you've heard us say this like 4 times already, emotionally complete with that.
Yeah.
And that is what helps you get complete so that you can step into a new season without carrying the heaviness of the last. Feeling that completion helps you embrace fully where you're going. So, we're never saying that you have to move on, but we are saying that there are incredible tools to help you to process what has been so that you can step fully into where you are going, where you are
Yeah.
going next. And
Yeah.
so,
Kind of like, go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, honey.
I was going to say, yeah, like navigating that in between is, I think, really powerful because a lot of times we just sort of feel stuck in this sort of amorphous, undefined place that we want to get out of, but we don't really sure how.
Yeah, absolutely. So we love to say this is freedom from and then brings freedom to. So we can't experience strong, healthy relationships while carrying unresolved grief. Like Dan even said, we can't compartmentalize things. It will show up. And it will show up in ways that we push away or we isolate, we hold back, we might even attack. We might even have a passive aggressive. Like it comes out in all these different ways. And so everything begins by finding freedom from the pain of unresolved grief, trauma, and loss in order to have the freedom to experience your life and relationships to the full.
Yeah. And so, in that sense, healing is um, it's a journey, not a destination. Cliche, but it's true. And so yours doesn't end here. The grief recovery method is a structured but very compassionate roadmap to help you process buried emotion and reclaim your full self. There are guided steps, caring support, curated resources that will help you learn to name each loss and give language to the grief that you haven't been able to say, and then really experience emotional renewal and self integration. And so, this is a path that isn't meant to be walked alone. And that's why we're committed to offering the encouragement and practical tools that you need, walking every step with you and celebrating every breakthrough as you are moving towards this promise of wholeness. The grief recovery method is, just so you know, the only evidence based program designed to help you become emotionally complete with losses of every kind. Again, not to forget, not to get over them, quote unquote, but to really experience freedom. So if tonight has stirred something in you, if you recognize yourself in this in between that we've been describing, then we invite you to take the next step with us.
Yes, this is the sign. I love it. So, the program of grief recovery is 8 weeks. It's one-on-one coaching sessions. We do 90 minutes each session, and it's over Zoom, which is great because you can be anywhere, anywhere in the world. And so we walk you through the grief recovery handbook, which is what we use. It helps you to heal old wounds, challenge limiting beliefs, and live from wholeness and clarity. In a nutshell, that's what it offers. So you are never alone, and we offer ongoing support between every session. And we love to welcome back alumni, people that have gone through the program, because you know that the healing is so foundational and the tools are so amazing. You're always invited to come back for alumni sessions to keep that momentum going.
Yeah.
A lot of great healing. So we love to just remind and have you consider this that there's so much at stake from your emotional health, your general happiness, and your relationships. And so you want to understand that those are so valuable, and this program helps to build all of that. All of it, your emotional health, your mental health, even your physical health. Like it's all affected by unresolved grief. And we have personally spent several years, several thousands of dollars, probably tens of thousands of dollars on therapy, on self-help books, on seminars and different programs, and never experienced the transformation that we did with the grief recovery method. And so we always like to say there is a real world value of this program, and we would love for you to experience it for yourself.
Yeah. So if anything that we've shared with you has stirred something, then we would love to invite you to a complimentary conversation. This is really a no pressure space for you to be heard, for you to talk about whatever feels unfinished, and then to explore what support might look like for you. So Before we show you how to book a call with us, we just want to say something really important. Some of you are here tonight because a grief recovery specialist you know and you trust invited you here. And so if that's you, we want to honor that relationship. Please reach back out to them. Let them know what moved you tonight. They would love to walk with you through this next step. And if you found your way here directly through us, then we would be honored to have that conversation with you ourselves.
Yes. So what you get, the total value of the program is we do a 30-minute call, totally free. It comes with that, with either Dan or myself. It's 8 weeks, 90-minute sessions, one-on-one Zoom coaching calls, and the value of this is $1,200. But we want to give you something special as a thank you for joining us today on this webinar. So our special offer is $100 off. If you are wanting to learn more, if you are ready to kind of delve in and see if this is for you, then we will honor that and give you $100 off. And we would love for you to book a free call. And I can put that in the chat. And you will also get a link in the email that we send you guys. But we would love to hear, we love to explore how we can support you, answer any questions. And we will create, believe it or not, it's totally personalized. And we work one-on-one. We can work around your schedule. We can set up weekly times and all of those things. And if you are alumni, we want to encourage you to book a call too, because we'd love to talk more about where you can go with these tools, because there's more. There's always more.
There's always more. So just so you know, we're never going to ask you to do anything that we don't do first. And I can tell you, you're going to be amazed. You're going to be amazed at how much transformation happens in just 90 minutes a week for 8 weeks. Every session builds on the next as it's uncovering and healing more than you can even imagine right now. Just so you know, also, the only resource that we use for the 8 week program is the Grief Recovery Handbook, which is included. And then it's also backed by more than 40 years of research. In fact, this program is considered the gold standard in recovery from grief and loss for that exact reason.
Yes. And so we want to end by just saying, because we've been talking about parts and kind of being fragmented by trauma or loss, these parts of you formed because something mattered. They carried you, they protected you, and they helped you to survive. And we want to say you don't have to survive in pieces anymore or disjointed in that way. And so we want to let you know that you are not broken for being here. We always love to say that you're not behind, you're not failing at anything. You're standing on the threshold of a brand new season that's filled with possibility, hope, and healing. And we want to encourage you to think about what life could look like with these tools to release any pain that's weighing you down. Because when we're in pain, it's hard to dream, it's hard to have vision for things. And so we'd love to invite you to learn more. And so reach out to whoever invited you or to us. We're happy to do that. And we will send you our Calendly link. I might put it in there while Dan is talking, actually, if I can grab it, because I forgot to pre put that in there.
Okay.
But I'll try to see if I can find that right now.
Okay. Well, before we close for tonight, I just want to take a few minutes for any questions that you might have. Like I said, we do love questions. So whether you have a question about something we've shared this evening, or maybe you have a question about how these ideas kind of maybe they connected to something inside you and you want to explore that a little bit more, or you just have questions about how the grief recovery process works and are looking for some more details, we're here for that. So just remember, there are no small or unimportant questions. If it's on your heart, it matters. So you can drop your question in the chat, or you can unmute yourself if you would like to share. And we will stay on as long as we need to make sure that all of your questions are answered.
I found a link.
Yay.
Ooh, I found the link.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Well, of course, Patricia is the person that referred me, so I definitely will reach out to her. But haven't really talked about this in detail. We've only met one time and visited. But I'm just wondering, if someone has gone on for years and felt like there's been a problem with motivation, a problem with focus, a problem with moving forward in life,
Hmm.
and they've had issues of grief by the definition that y'all put here that have happened a long time ago. And their mind, they feel like they're over it. They feel like they've moved on. But could that be the reason this thing that's happening?
That is a great question.
Yeah,
I
that is a very good question.
Really good question. Yes, a lot of times when we go through things, even in childhood, things that maybe happen in childhood or young, early in life, a lot of times we don't really realize how they're affecting us and the ways that we process through it. We might have even done things where we made agreements. Maybe we agreed, like, I'm never going to care about someone like that again, or, like little things that um, create bigger things later on. And so a lot of times what we've discovered is there will be maybe an incident that brings people in, like maybe a loss or a major life change. And then when we start doing the work, what the work does is it's so thorough and so deep that you start to connect to things that are probably unresolved that you don't really realizing are affecting you. I remember when I started going to grief recovery, my parents were getting divorced, and I was an adult. Dan and I were married a couple years. I didn't live at home, and my parents were getting divorced, and I was destroyed by this. And I wasn't young, I wasn't at home, but none of that mattered. And I didn't really understand until I went through this process. And I remember a friend telling me about it. And I was like, oh, I don't need that. I don't need grief recovery. I don't need that. And I ended up going to an informational meeting to learn about it. And I heard, unresolved grief is conflicting feelings caused by the end of a familiar pattern of behavior. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been probably grieving my whole adult life. And when I went through the process, I really thought, I don't really have that much loss. And when I went through the process, I was shocked at how much I had actually experienced and just kept going, kept going. You just kind of keep going. And so you kind of learn a lot. And I think what's so beautiful about it is the compassion for yourself that comes and the patience and the grace that comes as a result of just kind of being able to stop and go, wow, I've actually been through these things and I never really knew what to do with that. And giving it a voice, that it's very, very powerful.
Yeah. It's almost like I think, we talked about how we can become functional but still be divided inside. And so
Mhm.
it's almost like, we put on a lens. Like if you imagine like the glasses you were wearing, if they were tinted blue, I could ask you, what color is the wall behind you? And you would say blue, right? In fact, if I asked you what the color was, you would say blue because that's the tint that was on your glasses, right? So these things kind of become our lens that we see, and we just get used to everything being blue. That just becomes our normal. That just becomes what we're familiar with. But the reality is, if we were able to take those glasses off, we would see a whole host of colors that were there all along, but that we weren't able to see. And so I think sometimes, the functionality, our brains are very efficient at this, and the functionality of our life is mistaken for thriving in our life.
Mhm.
And that whatever that normal is becomes your normal. And so it's kind of like imagine um, you know, you're living in Colorado. So imagine you flew to New York, but you went by way of Hawaii. Now you're still getting to New York, but golly, I mean, that is really out of your way. I mean, like, dang, that's adding so many hours and miles to your trip, but you still get there. Like you'll end up in New York, just way longer, And so that's kind of like where that functionality is there, but you're not really thriving, and so it's very understandable why people would kind of think they're doing okay and not really be aware of the grief that they're carrying. And a lot of that just frankly has to do with the misinformation that we're given. I mean, I was just watching a movie the other day and it was like throwing out this flippant comment like, oh, well, like I'm on stage 4 of the stages of grief. And you're like, I mean, there
Yeah.
are no stages, it's like it's such a horrible myth that's been foisted on us. And even Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote the book that it was based on, came out and said years later, look, it was never meant that way. She was
Yeah.
writing a book about cancer patients and what happens to them when they're given a terminal diagnosis and how they process that. So it was this very narrow niche study that she was doing, and even that she said there's no one way to define it. So I think there's a lot of things that get in our way of, kind of knowing what grief really is. And then if we don't really know what it is, it's kind of hard to identify how it's affecting us. So,
And we've been so programmed about it, like you said, the stages of grief and everything. I did go to Bible college here in Colorado, and we had a whole course on grieving, and it completely changed my mind about how people grieve
yeah,
or what grieving is all about.
yeah.
But hearing it, of course, they didn't bring anything like this into it, but it just made me look at it a lot different. One
Yeah.
more question is,
Yeah.
how does this compare to neuroplasticity? Because I have that is kind of I'm actually a nurse, and I've been in health and wellness a long time, and I want to go into things to help people. In health and mental and physical health. And neuroplasticity is something that I've looked at it off and on, but I'm kind of diving in more. There's a doctor that just recently came out with a book. His name is Dr. Lee Warren, and he wrote a book called The Life-Changing Art of Self-Brain Surgery. And it's different than anything I have heard. I mean, Caroline Leaf has something. You see a lot of
Mhm.
the neuroplasticity, but this one, being a nurse, it really resonates. And I don't think you have to be a medical person to resonate. But he also brings the neuroscience and faith together.
Mhm.
So I wonder if this is just another tool, this grief recovery, or if the neuroscience could cover it. I just wonder if y'all had any input on that.
Well, I have actually worked with a lot of kids with special needs. I was a program director at a place called Brain Balance.
Okay.
And so that's based on Dr. Robert Melillo's work. And then Melillo's work is kind of adjacent to like Norman Doidge and Michael Merzenich, who've done a lot of research on the neuroplasticity of the brain and how it works. And
Mhm.
um, it's phenomenal, but it's more structural,
Okay.
meaning that, if you had a kid that was having a really difficult time focusing and you were able to address the core root cause of that and allow the corpus callosum, which is sort of the neural network that allows the two hemispheres of the brain to talk to each other, and you were able to improve that through different things, you're dealing with a structural improvement. But if that child, for example, were dealing with the divorce of their parents, doesn't touch that. So we're just talking, so there's a part to it where, but grief recovery will work in alignment with it. In other words, if you're creating a neural pathway of thinking about something, and the
Right.
brain does that because it's creating a shortcut for us to be more efficient. So once we do something, it carves a neural pathway. It's like why when you're driving home from work, you don't even have to think about where you're going and you end up in your driveway because your brain does that for you. So it's kind of a similar thing here where what grief recovery does is it's carving a new neural pathway for you. So now you think of and process things differently.
And
But
that's kind of how this is actually talking about, because it is actually separating the mind and the brain structures. A
Mhm.
lot of the programs I have looked at is about the brain structures, but
Mhm.
he brings scripture into the mind and how it's so revealed in the scripture about the mind. So I don't know, you might
Yeah.
want to check it out. It's very, very interesting.
Sounds
And
awesome. I love that stuff.
it's not that I don't think as I listen to this and that fragmented, that really makes so much sense, and it might even explain the last 5 years of my life. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, so thank you for that information and input.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I think you hit it on the head when you said, I do believe that grief recovery is a tool that helps us to literally to
Yeah,
rewire these neural pathways because you are you are able to do something where you get complete, where you're able to speak about it, you name it, you're able to speak out loud, you're able to be heard in a safe environment without judgment, without correction. You're just able
yeah,
to be heard. And there's a process that happens when you speak these things out loud. And then what happens then is you are taking those lenses off, like what Dan was talking about, so you're able to see things through a new lens, and
mhm,
that is changing that neuroplasticity. It's
mhm,
rewiring those neural pathways that
sure,
fire in such a powerful, powerful way.
sure.
So
This
Yeah.
the man
time.
that wrote this actually he lost his son to a tragic. I think he was murdered.
Mm.
His son was murdered
Oh,
Oh
back
my
in
God.
wow.
2013. So it was a very tragic loss. And him and his wife were having a very difficult time processing. I mean, they both just
Sure.
wanted to stay in bed all the time. And that's how he actually developed this program. He also was in the Iraqi war and saw a lot of horrible
Mm.
things. And
Mm.
Oh,
something else. Oh, he went through a divorce early in his life. So that's what this came out of. And so
Mhm.
it kind of seems very connected in a way.
Mhm.
Anyway, I'm gonna reach out to
what?
Patricia and get more information for sure.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What was the name of that book?
It's called The Life-Changing Art of Self-Brain Surgery.
Great.
So
I
kind
love
of
that. I love
long,
that title.
and it's
I love
Dr.
that title.
Lee Warren, and he's a medical doctor. The forward was actually forward was actually written by Daniel Amen, and I'm sure y'all know who that
Oh
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So, but he has a YouTube. He's been around since 2014, and I just found out. But this book just was released like the 2nd or 3rd of February, and I'm just devouring it. So anyway,
No,
thank
it
y'all
sounds
so much
awesome.
for this presentation. It was amazing.
I
Oh,
found it
yeah.
on Amazon. That's awesome. Yeah, and it's very interesting his story because the gentleman that created the grief recovery method, John James, he lost a son at 3 days old, and he survived. He was in the Vietnam War. He went through so much trauma. Lost his
Wow.
brother, lost all these things, and he realized when he lost his little boy, he didn't know how to deal with it, how to process it. It affects
Yes,
his wife differently. They didn't survive, the marriage didn't survive.
sure.
And he kind of realized, and one of his questions was, I've gone through so much. How am I not able to handle this? And
Yeah,
that's when he was like, gosh, grief is accumulative. It just keeps
yeah,
coming up and up till you just don't have any bandwidth anymore. You have this much room and you're just trying to breathe. And he kind of developed, no, he did develop, not kind of, he developed the grief recovery method for himself because the tools, what he needed, he could not find.
yeah,
And so it's interesting, isn't it, how these things
yeah,
get developed when people go through just such excruciating pain.
yes.
And so very interesting. I'm going to look into that.
And
Thanks
they
for,
make tools to help other people get through it. Because I mean, it does sound like he had quite a similar background to Dr. Warren. And this one is neuroscience based, so it actually is not just something somebody made up.
Yeah.
And he is a neurosurgeon, so he's been in the brain a whole lot.
yes, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And he has chapters and stuff of how you can do it yourself, how you can help people doing it also. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's cool. The brain can do amazing things.
it is amazing. If people don't believe in God when they know about the brain, it's like, come on now.
Powerful.
Yeah, I would add to that that I've been through the grief recovery method 3 times now that I've
Mm,
learned the basic tools. And I was one of those who was directed to the book because I love the way you frame it, just being fragmented. And I haven't heard others frame it that way. It's really helpful. It's a
mhm,
really good descriptor of what it feels like inside because you have the if you're a person who has a career or a business or you didn't your way out from losses and disappointments wasn't into addiction.
mhm.
You maybe chose a more uh, productive or socially acceptable path like workaholism
Right.
or uh, you know art or music, or you do all these wonderful things and kind of like putting the pain to work for you,
Well,
or you have a very clean house all the time, or
yeah.
who
Right.
knows what all the things are, but there's still a part that's not showing up.
Yeah.
Like there's a part that doesn't get to participate in that. And I would say that early in my life, Daniel, your story reminded me of uh, where had that feeling early on of not showing up. Early in my life, I'm not even sure what triggered it, but I became very, what would probably be termed disassociated,
Mhm,
from myself and my life and my body even, and had a number of events that exacerbated it. It got worse and worse. Kind of like you were saying, my survival mechanism was distancing
mhm.
from myself or from others. And that was creating safety. But as events stacked up, I had to withdraw more and more and more to where I was actually disconnected from my own body at one point. And I had an experience. Since we've raised the topic of the creator and the divine here, I had an experience where I came to the end of my rope at that season and just invited, if there's a God, do something. And
Mm.
all of a sudden, all these parts were integrated back together. All of a sudden, I
Oh,
came back into
wow.
my body and I could taste and feel and see things differently. And I thought like, oh, great.
Mhm,
I can go, and I have since then, 35 years later, lived an amazing life and
mhm.
taken that and continued to grow in faith and pursuit of God and surround myself with others that are doing the same thing. But over 35 years of succeeding, and I love how the grief recovery method points this out, like, great, now I'm trained how to succeed, but barring a supernatural event, I'm still am not trained on what to do with the things that I lose, because the more successful I am, the more things I'm going to lose. The
Yeah.
more kids that I have, the more heartache I'm going to see them go through. The better my business, we just sold our business. We moved from our home. We launched our kids. We're getting older and aging. We're encountering health problems. We're having loss of people that we love, and we have a lot of relationships. So that's a
Mhm.
lot of losses, or walking with others who are hurting and not knowing how to help them. And I think Vicky or Dan, you were saying it just kind of stacks up to where I was
Yeah.
just writing this morning. This time last year, I felt literally like I was just barely looking out
Mm,
above
Yeah.
the stacked up, unprocessed life, positive and negative. Like there was just nowhere to know how to integrate it. I didn't know how to integrate it, how to attend to it. And somebody referred me to the grief recovery method, and I started reading the book, and I just started doing the steps, grabbed a friend and made her start doing them with me, grabbed two friends, and then and then distractions and etc. And they couldn't make appointments, and so I finally went on the grief recovery website and found a specialist because my friends kept disturbing, distracting out. And so we we would have, and the thing that reminds me here with this conversation too is the warning that is so true now that I've walked through the steps is that I felt like I was getting change just by reading and understanding, but they keep cautioning in the process. That doesn't mean you've done the steps.
Mm,
Understanding up here isn't getting it out of the body. And there's all of this talk now about an understanding about how the body keeps the score, pain trapped in our bodies. It's working its way out in ways like you described, and other ways, and disease, and so I just am so blessed. I'm in such a different person today after having found this method and walked it through, and I'm committed to walking the rest of my steps. And my husband and I went to the training and became certified, and we want to help others. Um, and so I'm connecting with you guys because I know you help with coaching next steps, and just because I admire that you've been walking this for 20 years and I can hear it in the way you frame it.
mm,
There's something about us, especially people who succeed and are comfortable with doing things mentally, that it's very appealing to feel like if we understand a thing, we've done a thing.
right,
And we actually haven't done it.
right.
Yeah.
You have to actually do the thing, which these steps, which are so awkwardly simple that they seem like they can't possibly do a thing. I, I'm like, I feel like what you're saying, like I'm being where the classic window of tolerance, my tolerance was so narrow that I moved out, lived alone, couldn't live with my husband, had to be in absolute control of my space,
Oh,
had to be in control of the volume of everything around me, absolute control over my schedule because I couldn't handle any more stimulus. I was tapped out.
yeah.
And I had succeeded all the way through life and I was tapped out. And now, like we're habitating together again. I have a daughter living with us. I'm socializing out in public again because I could unpack heart space and like you said, integrate because I couldn't even handle good things anymore. Like
Mm.
nothing.
Mhm.
I was done. I was maxed. And there's just some magic about these awkwardly simple, very unintellectual steps
Yeah.
that they just work and they start programming you from the inside out for a new life. Like
Mm,
window of tolerance, I don't feel like I'm tolerating anymore. Like those glasses came off. Like
yeah.
I'm living. And if something bothers me, I express it. Like that's just not working for me. We need to do something else. But I'm not like clenching and tolerating,
Mm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for walking it. I'm excited to get to know you guys better. And Kathy, do it. Grab everybody you know and make
Yeah.
them do it if you can.
Thank you
Yeah.
for, I love listening to what you had to say. It really resonated. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yes.
appreciate you
Really
guys.
quick. I know Dan has to jump off for a call, but I don't have to jump off so quick. So
Yeah.
I know you've got to go,
Mhm.
and I'm
It
gonna
was
just.
so great meeting you both. I loved our time tonight, and hopefully we'll see more. Hey,
He found
I'm
his way.
eavesdropping.
you're
He
the
found
you're
his
the
way in
actual name on the
Thursday.
screen. Okay, nice to meet you, Paul.
Yeah,
There's Paul
good to
up
meet
the Paul
you.
Huber. Yeah.
Birds of a feather here.
Yeah.
There you go.
All
Awesome. Well, it
right.
was so great, and yeah, keep stay on, honey, but I'll see you guys.
Okay. Have a good
All
call.
Thank you,
right. Bye
Daniel.
bye.
Bye bye.